And I can't help you.
And Dave,
if you want to give me the hot dog, I'll eat it. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the hosts and guests and do not necessarily reflect the official policy, position, or views of SWSC or the Sudbury Wolves Hockey Club. Hello and welcome to DenCast Podcast Episode 2. I'm David Bowen. With me is Bryan Cooper, otherwise known as Coop, otherwise known as the Super Cooper, maybe the Trooper Cooper. He's got a bunch of nicknames, but we know him best as one of the voices of the Sudbury Wolves. You may know him from that, or maybe over with his day job with Pure Country. Coop, thanks for joining me for another episode of the DenCast.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. The studio is awesome. It's so great to be able to talk hockey again. I know the season came to an end for the Wolves, and after that, it's, you know, you kind of move into summer mode almost, but I am so excited to be here to chat some hockey with you.
Yeah, we're just wrapping up the long weekend, and you talk about the Wolves season coming to an end. Unfortunately, there was another team of mine that season just came to an end, but we're not gonna get into that. I'll let you know that my dad is he's okay. He's battling through, but yeah, now both the hockey teams are out of the equation, so we're really into the off season now. First episode of the DenCast, I had our other broadcast partner, Rick Wyman, on with me. We covered the first half of the season, which took us to about January 4th. And at that time, the Sudbury Wolves had a record of 20 wins, 10 losses, and 5 losses in overtime. They were just 5 points out of first place in the Eastern Conference at that time. But this is an interesting part of the season as we take a look at the second half of the year. We're getting closer to the OHL trade deadline, which is January 10th. And I think you would agree with me, and me and Rick talked about this, but at the beginning of the year, a lot of the OHL experts, as me and Rick were talking about, kind of pegged the Wolves as probably a seller at the OHL trade deadline. But with a 20-10-5 record, that narrative seemed to be changing, and at around January 4th, I think it was more of an expectation that the Wolves were going to buy at the deadline. Do you agree?
I think so too, and it's true because the expectations, I think, for this team going into the year, I think there were some question marks as to, you know, where are we going to land, where are we going to finish, that kind of thing. And you're right, some heads were turning as soon as we hit the midway point of the regular season, and the team was playing incredibly well. In fact, I heard some people use the word an elite team. This team is playing at an elite level. All the skills were chipping in. We were seeing everything from every single line. You know, goaltending wasn't that bad either. The team was looking really, really good heading into the Christmas break, and a lot of people were starting to get excited about that. And I can only imagine from a management side of things, that could almost be tricky, could be a little bit challenging. Okay, you know, we were thinking maybe this way,
right?
And now our season is looking this way, so maybe that changes how we proceed into the next couple of months, aka the second half of the year.
Yeah, Rob Papineau's got a tough job, and I certainly don't think I could do it. But yeah, you're right. The season maybe at the beginning looked like you were heading down, maybe a team that was selling at the deadline, and now you're heading the opposite direction. And let's move to January 10th. Obviously, a massive day for every team in the OHL. The Wolves were actually playing a game this night, a home game against the Niagara Ice Dogs, but the storyline was what was going on off the ice, and that was obviously the trades that were being made. And the Wolves, they decided to be buyers, and they bought in a big way. We'll start with defenseman Noah Roberts, son of Gary Roberts, played for the Brantford Bulldogs. The Wolves picked him up for a couple of second-round picks. Being the son of Gary Roberts, I think you kind of know what you're getting from Noah Roberts. He's a tough defenseman, obviously a kid that's in phenomenal condition. That's probably a prerequisite for being a son of Gary Roberts. You got to be in good shape, and so they pick him up from Brantford, but that wasn't it. They picked up a goaltender from the Sarnia Sting. They kind of swapped goalies with Sarnia. Andrew Galton went to Sarnia. Obviously, coming to Sudbury was Carson Chartier, a local boy. But the biggest two acquisitions for me, they picked up a free agent centerman, Jack Ziliotto, from he was playing in the BCHL. He was a commit to RPI. He made a pretty big impact, but the biggest deal of the OHL trade deadline was picking up Henry Muse from the Ottawa 67s. I don't want to go into all the picks that went the other way. There were a lot of them, but also you lost a good young defenseman in Nolan Jackson who was sent to Ottawa. But Henry Muse, I believe at the time, was leading the OHL for points as a defenseman. I'd say Wolves fans were pretty excited about picking up a player of his caliber.
Well, even from our perspective too, as announcers and as broadcasters, I started to hear rumblings, and I was curious. Even a week out, I heard some rumblings about this. Now, sometimes you kind of have to take that and say, you know what, I don't know, where that source is coming from. But then it happened. And news broke, and it kind of went, in the Sudbury sports world viral, if you will.
For sure.
That Henry Muse was coming to Sudbury, and he was coming right away. In fact, he made the drive from Ottawa to Sudbury, and he was dressing for the next game, ready to roll. And right away, for those who didn't know, they were doing their homework, typing up, just looking up this Henry Muse, because guaranteed they've heard his name before, because he is a phenomenal defenseman, very, very talented, and you could see why the Wolves went out to get him. And you're right, they gave up a lot to get Muse, and he was the leading defensive scorer in the league at the time. And I think he continued to make a big stamp on the Sudbury Wolves organization. That was a huge move and a massive acquisition for the Wolves organization.
Yeah, absolutely. And you touched on it there. So there was a game to be played on January 10th, and Henry Muse was playing for the Ottawa 67s. It's not a 30-minute drive from Ottawa to Sudbury, but he got in the car, must have been right away as he found out, drove all the way to Sudbury. He was there 10 minutes before warm-up and said, I'm playing. He put his gear on, got out onto the ice, and of course, he scored in his first game as a Sudbury Wolf.
It's a perfect story.
Yeah, why wouldn't you? We've got that clip. We'll show it to you now.
30 seconds left. Henderson. Rebound. They score! How's that for a debut, Gary? A goal and an assist. Henry Muse, welcome to Sudbury.
Of course, Henry Muse buries in his first game, but the Wolves fell short. They lost that game 5-4 to Niagara. A late goal lost them that game. But you had to be impressed with Henry Muse in his first game as a Wolf.
Oh, it was great. It was phenomenal. And I wanted to touch on as well, this was in January, and I don't know if you've done a lot of road tripping in January throughout Northern Ontario specifically, or just Ontario in general, and that drive to Ottawa can be a little bit dicey. So the fact he made it to the Nickel City in time to dress for that game, and you could tell he was committed. He said, listen, I want to get in there right away. No need to give me a game or two to get used to my teammates. Throw me in there right away. And if I recall, he was on a line. He played with Roberts as well. So the two newcomers played together right away. And yeah, he made a big stamp on the Sudbury Wolves organization from game number one. And you're right, a perfect story, him scoring in his first game with the Wolves jersey on. And he just kind of went from there.
Absolutely. So that moves us to one of my favorite games of the season for the Sudbury Wolves, January 12th. So you talked about Noah Roberts obviously getting into the lineup. This game against the Kingston Frontenacs, a team that obviously the Wolves would see in the playoffs, but this is both teams are looking different. The Wolves have made some trades. Kingston made some trades, acquiring Joey Willis and a couple other pieces from Saginaw. So it was an interesting game to see, okay, now where do we size up against a good team in the Eastern Conference like Kingston? And the Wolves played a fantastic game. They ended up winning this game by a score of 10-6. Some key moments for me. Noah Roberts picked up his first point as a Wolf. We've got that clip. We'll show it to you.
Full game as Roberts chips it in for Sudbury. Villeneuve on it, spins it out front. Musty scores!
Some other key moments as well. Quinton Musty, he returned from injury. What a year it was for Quinton Musty. I talked about it with Rick. Obviously missing the first little bit due to not sure where he wanted to play this season, and then getting hurt. He comes back, of course, he scores. And then later on in the game, the Wolves had 9 goals. The game's out of reach, but that's not enough for Sudbury Wolves fans. They want 10 goals. They always want 10 goals. The "we want 10" chants are out. It happened earlier in the year in a game against Windsor. The Wolves were unable to do it. But they did it in this game. They scored the 10th goal, and Nathan Villeneuve had the celebration of the year, in my opinion, after scoring the 10th goal. We'll show you that.
Wolves want the 10th one. Villeneuve's in on goal. He scores!
Well, they got their 10.
Oh, look at that. He's got the perfect celebration for the moment as well with Tiger Williams.
A big win for the Sudbury Wolves, and if you're a Wolves fan, that's an exciting moment for the Sudbury Wolves team, and you're really starting to think, okay, this is a team that could maybe do some damage in the playoffs.
Well, it's funny you mentioned the "we want 10" chant, because doing all the home games this season, as I've done for quite a few seasons now for the Wolves, I don't think I remember the amount that happening so much. it was this season specifically, something happened in the fan base. First of all, the wave. The wave happened a lot inside the Sudbury Arena this year. Fans got right into it. But the "We Want 10" chant, it happened multiple times this past season. It did. And fans got it in that particular game. And I think Villeneuve, in the Villeneuve style and fashion that he brings to the ice, he knew that, and he knew what the fans wanted. He gave the fans what they wanted.
He delivers. You know what? Nathan Villeneuve, he very rarely doesn't give the fans what they want. If you're going to pay the price of a ticket to come watch a Wolves game, Villy's usually going to make it worth your while, whether that be scoring goals, making plays, big hits, fights. You never know what you're going to get from Villeneuve, but we love watching him play. So a big win for the Wolves on that night, but it took a quick kind of turn the opposite direction, unfortunately. From January 16th to January 28th, the Wolves lost 5 straight games. Now, they played some good teams during that stretch. I mean, the London Knights, he lost to them twice, once in London, once in Sudbury. It's been a long time since the Sudbury Wolves have beaten the London Knights. I think it's something like 20 years or something like that, but I mean, London Knights just won the OHL championship. They lost one game all playoffs. So I don't think that's something to kind of hang your heads about. They're a fantastic team. But there were a loss to Windsor, there was a loss to Sarnia, and a loss to North Bay in there as well. And maybe this was, maybe park the car, hold your horses a little bit. Maybe this team isn't as good as we thought they were.
Well, and it's true, because, I think there's different perspectives, right? There's the fan perspective. Fans typically, if they don't follow the sport so much, they see wins and losses. That's what they see, or they see a losing streak. Whereas from a broadcasting side and more of an analysis side, you can kind of see, okay, they've lost 3 or 4 games. It's not the end of the world. Every team goes through a streak like that. It's not the end of the world. But again, it was tricky because this kind of became a bit of a downward trend. And we did see that. That's exactly what happened. And then you're right. Some questions were starting to be asked of, okay, for what happened to the team that we saw, November and for the most part of December as well. Where's that team gone? And we were all, I think fans were hoping that this is just kind of like a little losing skid, if you will. And then, they pick it back up before the end of the season.
Right. Yeah. So middle of January to the end of January, not great. February wasn't the best month either. They didn't have a 5-game losing streak like that, but they were kind of bouncing around 500. But then the beginning of March, things started to turn around again, and the Wolves seemed to find their game. They went on a 5-game winning streak from March 2nd to March 7th. Let's go through some of those games. So they go in March 2nd. They're playing the Brampton Steelheads at home. They've lost 7 of 10 games going into this game, and it really felt like a big game for the Sudbury Wolves, and a fantastic game it was. A 3-2 overtime win against the Brampton Steelheads. I know you were there doing the game on TV. That was the game. Kieran Walton scored the overtime goal after Ivan Kovic made that crazy initial save. We've got that clip. We'll show it to you.
Hughes across, Walton through the seat, Villeneuve. Oh, off the goalpost, another chance. They score!
So the Wolves, they get off the schneid. They beat a good team in the Brampton Steelheads, but you're facing another good team right after that. The next team the Wolves played, I believe, was the Niagara Ice Dogs. A game that the Wolves had to come from behind. They scored a couple big goals, 2 that I remembered and picked out. Tajon Street scores to tie the game, and whenever he scores, it's going to be a good night for the Sudbury Wolves. We've got both of those clips. Musty scored the game winner. We'll show both those clips now.
Leaves it for Muse. Backdoor, Tajon Street scores! Plays it for Villeneuve. Swings it into the corner. Walton out front, they score! That one's gonna count! Quinton Musty!
So you win that game over Niagara. Okay, you've won 2 in a row. Now you've got another test coming into the Sudbury Community Arena, and that was the Oshawa Generals, and kind of a unique game for us because usually we don't get to call Sudbury Wolves games together, but Rick Wyman had to take the night off, so I filled in and did color commentary. Before we get into what happened on the ice in that game against the Oshawa Generals, Coop, maybe let's talk about what happened at the what do we call our broadcast setup? The Wolves hot stove on CKLU. Yeah,
we came up with a name by the end of the season. I don't even remember what it is.
I don't remember either, but we were. For fans who know where our broadcast setup was this year, we were right there with you guys, basically, and we apologize for maybe ruining some eardrums throughout the season. Because
top of section 4.
Yes, that's where we were all year, and there was a moment in that game, if I remember correctly. I think it might have been Billet Family Appreciation Night that night as well. So we really had to earn our pay at the beginning of the game, filling some airtime before the national anthem. And while all that was going on, one particular Sudbury Wolves fan who has been a season ticket holder for a long time, as we were live on CKLU on 96.7, came up to Coop and he had an interesting chat with you about a hot dog. You want to get into that?
Hey, if you're giving me the opportunity, I have shared this story many times. And you have to understand, Dave and I, we don't do games together because he's often on the road, or he'll do a home game if I'm not available or something. And so this was fun because Dave and I were really excited to do the game together. And that night, there were multiple really unique things that happened in that broadcast. It was a long intro because of the Billet families, which is great, which is awesome. We had a lot to talk about when it came to the hockey game. But as we were talking pre-game, I had this sense that someone was standing behind me. And sure enough, I could see in my peripherals as Dave was talking that there was a gentleman that was standing there it seemed like he wanted to say something to me specifically. And so as I kind of directed a question to Dave, I took my headset off, and he was there for probably a good 5 minutes. I took my headset off really quickly, and I said, "Hey, we're just on the air. What can I help you with something?" And this gentleman was not happy about the hot dog that he had been served up. He was not happy about his hot dog. In fact, he proceeded to open said hot dog, and he showed me all of the toppings. He showed me the receipt for how much he paid for said hot dog, and then he asked where he could go to have the situation rectified. To which I responded, "We are live on the air right now, and you might want to go back to where you purchased the hot dog."
And I can't help you. And Dave, if you want to give me the hot dog, I'll eat it.
Dave is graciously carrying the conversation as I'm still handling hot dog guy. Now he did leave, and I really hope, gentlemen, this guy got his new hot dog because he was not happy. But for those who are wondering, we just call the hockey games. We do not cook the hot dogs. But that was certainly one of the most memorable
moments.
Off-air moments.
100%.
I'm really glad that I got to experience that with you. Nothing against Rick, but it was the one game that you and I got to do together.
Of course, we'll never forget it.
I will never forget.
And you know what? The Wolves did a good job on the ice of making sure it was a memorable game as well. You know, unique moment off the ice, but unique game as well as Hudson Chitteroni had his first multi-goal game in the Ontario Hockey League against a fantastic team in the Oshawa Generals. Saw them make it to the finals. Let's watch your 2 goal calls for Hudson Chitteroni.
The other direction. He'll drop for Chitteroni. Shot comes. He scores! Right between the legs. And just like that, the Wolves open up the scoring. Chitteroni is out of the box. Out in front, and here comes Chitteroni. Breakaway. He is all alone. Hudson Chitteroni, and he scores!
Massive win for the Wolves. I believe they beat the Oshawa Generals 5-3 this night, and obviously a fun night for me and you. And okay, now the Wolves have won 3 games in a row.
Can I just, but
absolutely,
I just want to vouch for the hot dogs. They really are delicious. By the way, at the Sudbury Arena. Shout out to the arena crews. The hot dogs are fantastic.
Absolutely, yes. We do not have the same opinion.
Now we can carry on.
Yes, now we can carry on. This episode is brought to you by Greater Sports, the ultimate destination for Sudbury sports fans. Whether you're cheering on the Sudbury Wolves, 5 Cyclones, or Spartans, Greater Sports is the place to get your best bold branded apparel. Yeah, so 3 wins in a row for the Wolves, and now you move into another tough opponent on I believe it was March 9th, where you play the Barrie Colts. Barrie, throughout the whole season, seemed to have Sudbury's number, but not this night at the Sudbury Community Arena. A 7-2 win for the Wolves, and Quinton Musty gets a hat trick on home ice. Let's show you that.
Musty now over the blue line. Nice move and a shot. He scores! Tiller in his own zone gives it away to Musty. Musty walking right in on goal. He scores! Quinton Musty's got a pair. Face off when they score! It's the hat-trick goal for Quentin Musty.
Now the Wolves have they've won 4 games in a row, and it moves us to the last game of this really good stretch in March. March 11th, it was a wild win over the Brampton Steelheads. The Wolves ended up winning this game 8-6. There's plenty of clips from that game, but the moment that sticks out for me is the trip to Brampton. The Wolves bus, which I ride all season long, following the Wolves on the road. Usually, seamless operation to and from, and nothing goes wrong. But the bus broke down 10 minutes away from I believe the CAA Center in Brampton, and I just want to shout out all the Wolves parents of all the players. I know Hudson Chitteroni's dad came with his truck and started loading up stuff on the bus, and shout out to the Uber drivers in Brampton as well, as they took most of the players to the game. The game ended up getting delayed a half hour, but shout out to the Wolves as well. They were able to kind of stay focused and beat the Brampton Steelheads this night 8-6. And to me, that was the best stretch of hockey the Wolves played in the second half of the season. That's 5 really good teams in the Eastern Conference, and the Wolves are able to beat them all.
And just hockey aside, isn't it interesting? There's the hockey season that fans see, but there's all these things that happen behind the scenes often for every team. Every team goes through these situations where they're delayed by something totally fluky. It's a broken down bus. It's who knows what. These things happen.
Yep.
And it takes some unsung heroes to make sure that the players and the staff get to the rink on time and that the game can still proceed.
Yeah, I guess I should thank my dad as well. He came and picked up me and assistant coach Andrew Desjardins and took us to the rink as well. So, yeah, thank you to everyone that helped out during that situation. And you're right, there's plenty of moments, I'm sure, throughout the entire Ontario Hockey League of just communities and families coming together to help their local teams, obviously. All right, now we move to the end of the season, and one thing I'll mention as well is Coach Adelik. He really wasn't around for most of the second half of the season for the Wolves. He was out with an injury, so that obviously hurt the Wolves in terms of trying to win hockey games down the stretch. But the last 4 regular season games, the Wolves lost all 4 of them. Games lost to Oshawa, they lost to North Bay. The last game of the season was against North Bay, and North Bay had to win, and Sudbury really wasn't fielding their best roster. At this point, they were locked into 5th place. But obviously not a great feeling to end the regular season losing 4 in a row.
No, not at all. And you're right. I mean, we kind of had the up and down roller coaster going at that point. And I mean, we know what happened in the first round playoffs, obviously. And the Wolves roster was, as you mentioned, I know Delic came back for the last playoff game, but I think at this point, you could really see how much the Wolves roster was missing a guy like Coach Adelik. And it's not a discredit to any of the other players, but you're right. The Wolves went 5 for 5 in their last 10 games of the regular season, if I recall. And you're right. They dropped their last 4 games. What didn't help was also the penalties through the regular season. They were number 1 in that category for the Eastern Conference and number 2 in the league behind Saginaw. Saginaw was actually the leading penalty getting team in the league.
Right.
It was a very, no surprise, it was a tough way to wrap up the season, dropping your 4 straight. Now, that happens sometimes. Sometimes that happens. And playoffs can sometimes spark this renewed energy with a team. Sometimes, teams are often able to just say, you know what, that happened, let's leave it behind. And again, it's no discredit to anybody, but the Wolves, that's kind of what they were going into the postseason with. Yeah. And I don't think it helped.
No, I don't think so either. And just us talking about that, it reminded me, the Dallas Stars, they I believe they lost their last 6 regular season games going into the playoffs and then lost the first playoff game, but they obviously found a way to turn it around. So just to build on your point there. But yeah, let's move into the first round matchup of the playoffs. The Sudbury Wolves versus the Kingston Frontenacs, the 5 seed being the Wolves, the 4 seed being the Frontenacs. So home ice goes to Kingston. And it's a strange team for the Wolves in the Eastern Conference because you only play Kingston twice in the regular season, unlike teams like Barrie and Niagara where you see them all the time. So there wasn't really a familiarity between these 2 teams. Just 2 games in the regular season, and both of them weren't really close games. You have that 10-6 win from Sudbury on January 12th, and then the only game in Kingston was all the way back in October, and the Frontenacs beat the Wolves 7-2 in that game. So you're not really taking much out of those 2 games because it's such a difference in scores. But that was the matchup, and the first game was in Kingston. Game 1, it was a 4-1 win for the Kingston Frontenacs. Some of the moments I wanted to talk about. First one was Noah Roberts got hit with a pretty, not vicious, I want to say, but a big hit towards the head area. He goes down, and kind of all heck breaks loose after that. Nathan Villeneuve gets into a fight. He ends up missing pretty much the entire first period with a 10-minute misconduct, so that didn't really help the Wolves early on in that game. And ultimately, the Wolves, you lose game 1 4-1, and Charlie Schenkel played well for Kingston, but you talk about the discipline. Losing a player like Nathan Villeneuve, especially when you don't have Coach Udelic, it really thins out your product on the ice.
Oh, absolutely. And a guy like Nate Villeneuve, I mean, look at his stats. I was just doing a little bit of homework looking back over the season before our chat here today too, and he was in the top 5 scoring for the Wolves when it came to goals, when it came to assists, I believe. Points for the team in general. And he's a guy that you look to in the postseason. He is just one of those players. We mentioned it earlier on our chat here of how he, he answers the bell every single time. He knows what fans want. And he is the guy, to speak on that hit on Roberts, who would be the first to step in to defend his teammate after getting absolutely rocked with just a thunderbolting hit. Yeah. And that's exactly what Roberts took. Villeneuve stepped in. And unfortunately for that, Villeneuve wasn't available for the remainder of that period, and he was out for a bulk of that game. So, but isn't it amazing how that can almost sway a game?
Absolutely.
Right. And when it comes to postseason, it's crazy. That's playoff hockey. These things happen. Right. But again, Nate Villeneuve, he's the guy who will step in to defend his teammate.
Let's move into game 2 and talking about looking for a guy to produce in the playoffs. Do you look to Nate Villeneuve? And that's exactly what happened in game 2. And for me, the best game of the series between Sudbury and Kingston. It was a heroic third period comeback for the Wolves. I should mention as well, Noah Roberts, he didn't play again for the rest of the series. So that hit really took a toll on the Wolves decor as well. But game 2, it ended up being a 4-3 Kingston Frontenac's win in double overtime. But I'll always remember the third period for the Wolves. A heroic comeback sparked by 2 Nathan Villeneuve goals. We'll take a look at those.
Burns with it. He gave it away. It's loose in front. Villeneuve scores! Nathan Villeneuve! He'll give it back to Musty. Across for Walton. Walton backdoor. Villeneuve scores! Nathan Villeneuve! He scored twice here in the third!
Great for Villy to come up big and produce and tie the game. And the Wolves, they got another power play with 2 minutes left in the third, and they had some great chances to win it then, but they couldn't. And the game ends up going to double overtime. Gage Hayes kind of sneaks one by the arm of Krawchuk, which I'm sure he'd love to have back, but he played phenomenal the entire game to even get the Wolves to that point. That was the longest Sudbury Wolves game I've done, and I did it by myself. So I think I had 3 iced teas, 4 water bottles of coffee trying to get through it.
Oh, I need a water. I need a break. I might need some stress pills as well. We'll step aside. I'm David Bowen. We'll send it to commercial break.
You've done it longer than me. What's the longest Sudbury Wolves game you remember doing?
Oh, man. Wolves fans, this one will hurt a little bit. It was back when Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen.
Oh, yeah.
It was that year, and it was against the Ottawa 67s. Triple overtime. It was in Sudbury, obviously, at the Sudbury Arena. Called that one, and I remember running out of water, and I believe it was also a weeknight, if I recall. And I do a morning show. My regular day job is a morning show, and so often Wolves games during the week, I'm home late, and then I'm up very, very early, right before 4 the next morning, and I will never forget that one. And that one hurt. You could tell it hurt. It hurt the fans. It hurt the players, and you see that in any game, any overtime or multiple overtime periods, in any league, and it stings.
It's crushing.
And that was the elimination of the Wolves in that series.
I was on the bench for that game, so I remember that game very very vividly. And when you lose a game like that, it is crushing because you work so hard, you put in so much energy. Obviously, I didn't. I just watched. But speaking for the players on the ice,
it's like 2 full games.
They battled so hard, and a penalty was called, and the Wolves ended up losing that game. But Yeah, those games where you play so long, you really want to win them. And I think that was the turning point in the series. So now we move into game 3, first game on home ice for the Wolves. I wasn't in attendance for that one. You and Rick had the call. All I pulled up was it was a 4-goal second period for the Kingston Frontenacs, which propelled them to a 4-1 win. What do you remember from game 3?
Well, first of all, I remember the energy inside the Sudbury Community Arena. There is something beautiful and contagious about playoff hockey when it comes to fan atmosphere, and had the opportunity to experience that at the Sudbury Arena, not as much as other broadcasters in the the Wolves realm have, but it is something to be seen and something to really be experienced, and you could feel it. There was some anticipation among the fans. They knew they were down 2-0, but at that point, it's you kind of enter the building and fans were feeling it, and you're right. First period goes by, okay, and then the second period happens. And it's actually interesting as we're talking. Leafs fans, we just went through something like that.
This happens
exactly. Yeah. First period ends, and you're kind of like, okay, all right,
everything's fine.
Weather the storm,
yeah.
You're all good. And then the second period happens, and that just kind of foretold the rest of that game. Wolves get one back, obviously. But I will always say and give credit to the fans in Sudbury, because there was a certain atmosphere and energy inside the Sudbury barn. Even when they dropped that game 3, there was still an energy that was there. Obviously, fans weren't happy that they had the loss, but there was still an energy that was going to go into game number 4, because especially with a city like Sudbury, from what I've seen, with the Wolves organization and with Wolves fans, and it's crazy. It'll be 10 years, actually, that I've been calling games for the Wolves.
Let's do that.
Yeah, it's cool. On radio, which is fun. These fans, they feel it, and they're in their heart and soul with their team. Even if you're down 3-0, they are there. They're feeling it, and that is what I remember about game 3.
Yeah, so that moves us into game 4, and yeah, a shorter time for me doing the games, but just knowing Sudbury Wolves fans, even down 3-0, the Wolves aren't going to go down without a fight. They're going to continue to try and make a pushback into this series, and I think you talked about it earlier, but Coach Adelic, 20-year-old forward, he had a shoulder injury, easily could have said, you know what, I'm going to let this heal, I'm going to go play my Division I hockey next year. Sorry, guys. But that's not in the fiber of Coach Adelic. He said, you know what, this could be the last time I get to put a Sudbury Wolves jersey on. I'm gutting it out. I'm playing this game. So Adelic makes a return to the Sudbury Wolves lineup, which is obviously a huge boost at whatever percentage he was at. But they get him back, and another 1-goal game in this series that easily could have gone either way. I'm sure Wolves fans already know that the final score of that one. Kingston ended up winning by a score of 3-2. I was there watching it as a fan, and the corner of the rink I was at, the Wolves had so many chances when the game was tied at 2 to take the lead, but they just couldn't find a bounce. And whenever that happens, I feel like both of us have watched hockey long enough where if you don't get the bounce at one end, it usually happens on the other, and that's what happened in game number 4. Another 2-goal game from Nathan Villeneuve, though, and he had a breakaway to potentially get a hat-trick in that game. So talk about playoff performances. For me, I know it was only a 4-game playoff run, but Nathan Villeneuve is my playoff MVP. And that was it. The Wolves season comes to an end, and I went and talked to you and Rick after the game on the broadcast, but I don't think the Wolves deserve to get swept. Famous line from my dad that he always told me, if ifs and buts were candy and nuts, we'd all have a Merry Christmas. So I guess, they could have not got swept, but they did. That was the end result. But another fun season for me doing the Sudbury Wolves games. Obviously, you wish for a different outcome. And, you get people kind of critiquing every little move that the Wolves have made throughout the season and all that. But this Wolves team under Scott Barney, they worked hard. They competed every game. And for me, they played above expectation the entire season.
Yep, and I think it's good to touch on the head coach as well, Scott Barney, and had a chance to meet him as soon as he got into the city, actually. We actually helped him move into his house.
Right, yeah.
And I happen to know Logan Stutz, the Sudbury 5 head coach, and he said, hey, can you come and help? I said, absolutely. So I had a chance to meet him briefly, and just from that small interaction, in my head, I was like, this is a good guy. This is a good guy who cares. He wants to be here. And you know what? I think we saw that in the regular season, and is that he's a guy who cares. He cares about his players. And, I didn't have as many interactions with him as you probably did. But from the perspective from the games, and you could tell that the players were buying in his system. And you know what? It will probably still take some time for the players that remain moving into this coming season. You know, that will continue. And I think he did a heck of a job with this club. And you're right, maybe exceeding a little bit above what many expected throughout the regular season, especially performing at that elite level at one point in time, right? Tough way to kind of go out. And you're right, do they deserve to be swept? It's a tough question to ask, obviously, and you're right, everybody will have their own critique, but good head coaching, and I think the coaching system in general, and that's just coming from someone who could see kind of the game as a whole. It appears as if there's a mutual respect and that the players were buying into the coaching system.
Absolutely. And I think just the continuity of having Scott, Andrew, and Drake come back for next season, I think is only beneficial for all the returning guys and even the new guys coming into the fray for next year's Sudbury Wolves team. So yeah, that's the second half of the season. Coop, thanks for joining me here today. I've got one last little segment that we're running here on the DenCast where I ask a trivia question each episode, and fans can text the number that's in the description with their name and then the correct answer to the question. Last episode was who has the most points all time for a Sudbury Wolf. That one's a bit of an easier one. This one's a little closer home to me, and you'll know the answer to this one for sure. So don't blurt it out. But
so I can't play.
No, you cannot play. You already get to the Wolves games for free. Let's go. Okay, so the question today is: what two twin brothers played for the Sudbury Wolves from 2016 to 2019? They were fan favorites, so I'm sure Wolves fans will be able to get this one rather quickly. So text the number, and if you're the first one to text, you'll get some free tickets for a Sudbury Wolves game next season. That was Bryan Cooper. I'm David Bowen. That was DenCast episode number 2. We'll see you next week. Coop, thanks for coming.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. Appreciate it.